Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some of our witnesses seem to be here advocating what they'd advocate in any other committee that wasn't even talking about China. If you're paid to convince Congress to let you drill for oil in Yellowstone National Park, you can then come to a hearing on China and say, well, that's the way to take care of China. Mr. Chairman, thank you for focusing on the importance of the U.S.'s world reserve currency. And we should remember that the announced purpose of crypto is to partially displace the U.S. dollar, and there is a bill in the Senate to make crypto the reserve currency of the dollar. And I think you understand how important it is that nothing displace the dollar as the world's reserve currency. Likewise, I think it was Mr. Cassandra who focused on money laundering. Crypto is advocated by its own supporters as a way to do massive transactions or large transactions out of the view of the U.S. government. And that's perhaps why 100% of the ransomware attacks in recent years have demand payment in crypto. Mr. Muhlenson, I hear what you say about China debt. Too many small countries are being told, well, you borrowed China's money, so you have to give us your port. What we need to do is say to every lender and every credit rating agency that when China makes an unfair loan and you don't repay, that can't be used against the country's credit rating. So that countries who face in this circumstance will, instead of giving China their port, they can give China their middle finger and still borrow from American corporations, banks, and international lending institutions. We've made some unforced errors. One of those, as the Wall Street Journal points out, is we should be focused on China, and instead we go to economic war with Canada and Mexico. Second, we have cut aid in some to tiny countries in the Pacific, to the Cook Islands, to Solomon Islands, to Tonga, where we just have million-dollar programs. These are the islands where my father's friends gave their blood in the last war in the Pacific, and now we're turning over control of those islands to China for to save a few $1 million. The original sin was giving China most favored nation status. Before then, their economy was tiny. The vast majority of Democrats voted against that, and we stood up to our own president. And I turn to my Republican colleagues and say, perhaps your proudest moment this year will be when you stand up to a Republican president. In capital flows, it's nice to say, well, we shouldn't send any capital to China. Keep in mind, because of that huge trade deficit, which I might add was much bigger under Trump than it was under Biden, and was even bigger still in the pre-COVID years of Trump. So Trump gave us the worst trade deficit in history vis-a China. But we are dependent for over $1.5 trillion of investment in our debt instruments on China, but we've got to look at equity flows. So believe it or not, right now we subsidize Americans who invest in Chinese stocks. We do so through our tax system and the capital gains allowance. I'm going to ask all witnesses here, please raise your hand if you believe that we should provide subsidies to Americans who choose to invest in Chinese stocks. Let the record show no hand went up. And yet, I have great difficulty. I've only gotten one Republican co-sponsor for the bill that I'm going to reintroduce. I hope all of you join me in co-sponsoring this, to say no capital gains allowance for investment in Chinese stocks. Now, I know that offends the billionaire class, but you cannot stand up to China if you're unwilling to offend the billionaire class. Mr. Doshi, I'm not able to read your sign so well, so I may have mispronounced your name. Are there unique risks for Americans when they invest in Chinese stocks, such as expropriation, that should be part of the disclosures they get from the SEC?
Thank you, Congressman. I think that there are significant risks. I'm not sure that we have, I mean, that market itself is highly volatile, unpredictable. There's no adequate auditing of these companies. Our due
Well,
diligence firms.
the auditing, Senator Kennedy and I did something about, but
Yes.
there's everything else.
And the
Gentleman's time has expired.